What is discipline? In schools, discipline is basically the way we teach, guide, and manage student behavior. It's not just about consequences. It's mainly about setting clear expectations for how students should act and helping them learn self-control and responsibility. A quote from the Cambridge Dictionary states, "Discipline is the training that makes people more willing to obey or more able to control themselves, often in the form of rules and punishments if these are broken, or the behavior produced by this training." Discipline today is viewed as more than punishment. It's a process that helps students grow and learn appropriate behavior. The U.S. Department of Education also explains in their guiding principles for safe and inclusive schools that discipline should support students, keep them safe, and create a positive environment, rather than only focusing on correcting behavior. So overall, discipline is about teaching, guiding, and supporting students, not just punishing them. How has discipline changed? Discipline in schools has changed a lot over the years. Today, many schools are using restorative practices, which help students repair harm and rebuild relationships instead of just getting punished. We're also seeing more social-emotional learning added into classrooms. This helps students recognize and manage their emotions, and it supports their behavior in a healthier way. Another big change is that suspensions and expulsions, especially for small things, are being used less often. There's also a growing focus on fairness. Schools look closely at their discipline data to make sure certain groups of students aren't being punished more than others. Walden University talks about these changes toward more positive approaches. The Department of Education also encourages schools to use data and to choose alternatives to suspensions. Looking back, discipline used to be very different from what we see today. Corporal punishment, like paddling, was once common in U.S. schools, and it's still legal in 17 states as of now. In the 1990s and early 2000s, many schools followed zero-tolerance policies. These were strict rules where students got the same punishment every time, no matter the situation. This led to a lot of suspensions and expulsions, even for smaller behavioral issues. Over time, researchers and organizations started pointing out problems with these approaches, like increased inequities and contributions to what's known as the school-to-prison pipeline, which is the theory that students, particularly those from marginalized communities, are being pushed out of public schools and into juvenile and criminal justice systems. The Education Law Center describes how zero-tolerance policy started, and the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights shows us how these older systems often affected certain racial groups more than others.
When researching and studying discipline in schools, I found an article from Northwestern University who did a study on discipline and attendance in elementary schools. The study looked over 66,000 students in grades K through 5 during the 2021 through 2022 school year and found some important patterns. It first found that disciplinary actions like suspensions and referrals increased as students moved through elementary school. They peaked in third grade and actually stayed high through grade 5. Found that male students had higher rates of both suspensions and referrals rather than female students. And it also found that ELLs, or English language learners, had significantly lower rates of disciplinary actions than their non-ELL peers. Why discipline? Discipline creates a sense of predictableness in the classroom and allows a teacher to know what they can expect. It also helps students to develop self-control, take responsibility of their actions, and minimizes disruptions, giving the teacher more time for instruction. Discipline fosters respect for the teacher in the classroom and solidifies expectations for students. Why not discipline? Discipline can create negative long-term outcomes for students. According to Harvard, a strict school climate can negatively impact long-run outcomes. It can impact educational attainment, arrests, and incarceration rates for the overall student body. While removing a student from the classroom takes away from disruptions and seems like the quickest option, there are far worse negative impacts on the students long term. Harvard found that there are large negative impacts on later life outcomes for students overall. This is directly connected with a high suspension rate.
How laws affect discipline trends. School discipline is strongly shaped by federal laws, especially when it comes to students with disabilities. One of the biggest laws is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA says that students with disabilities must receive a free and appropriate public education. This is called FAPE. even when they show challenging behaviors. This means schools must try and support and interventions before using removals like suspension. When behavior becomes a pattern, schools must complete a functional behavior assessment and consider whether the behavior is connected to the student's disability. Section 504 offers similar protections for students who need accommodations but might not qualify for special education. Because of these laws, schools have moved away from harsh punishment only approaches and towards more supportive systems. These laws also require schools to document what they've tried to make decisions based on data. So in short, laws push schools to be more proactive, more fair, and more supportive when responding to behaviors. Discipline in general education classrooms. In general education classrooms, discipline usually follows school-wide systems, and because classes tend to be larger and have fewer built-in behavioral supports, teachers often rely on the same expectation and consequences for most students. This can lead to more office referrals or suspensions when students struggle, simply because individualized supports aren't always available in these settings. General education classes often use a consequence-based approach, meaning misbehavior is addressed after it happens instead of trying to understand the cause. As a result, students who have trauma, learning needs, or ongoing behavior challenges may end up punished more frequently instead of receiving targeted help. Overall, these classrooms provide structure for many students, but they aren't always equipped for support students who need more than the basic expectations. Discipline in special education classrooms. Discipline in special education classrooms looks very different because it is customized to each student. Many students have behavior interventions based on functional behavior assessments. Instead of seeing behavior as misbehavior, special education teams view it as communication. This means they focus on teaching skills like emotional regulation, communication, and coping strategies. Because IDEA gives strong protections, students with disabilities cannot be removed from schools as easily. Teachers use strategies like de-escalation, sensory tools, structured routines, and calm-down spaces. These classrooms often track behavior daily so they can adjust plans quickly. The overall goal in special education setting is not to punish, but to help students grow and learn the skills that they need. This approach leads to more in-class support and fewer suspensions, but it also requires more training and teamwork. Discipline trends from Connections Over Compliance. The book Connections Over Compliance has influenced many schools and districts. Her main point is that punishment doesn't work when students are stressed and dysregulated. Instead, she explains that children need connection and co-regulation before they can think clearly or change their behavior. This is based on brain science, which shows that kids can't use logic or self-control until they feel safe and regulated. Because of her work, many schools are moving away from traditional just do what I say discipline and towards trauma-responsive practices. Examples include calming corners, sensory tools, morning connection routines, and teaching students about their brains and emotions. The big shift is from asking, how do we make students comply, to how do we support students so they feel safe enough to learn new behavior skills. This relationship-based model matches the national trends of reducing suspensions and using more restorative, healing-centered approaches.
As we look ahead, discipline in schools is continuing to move in a more supportive direction. We'll probably keep seeing more restorative practices because they help build trust and relationships in the classroom. Social emotional learning and mental health supports will also become even more important since these play a huge role in helping students manage emotions and behavior. Schools are shifting toward prevention, meaning they want to stop behavior problems before they happen instead of only reacting afterwards. We'll also see a growing reliance on data to make sure discipline is fair and consistent, and equity will always remain a priority, with efforts to reduce discipline gaps for students of color, students with disabilities, and other groups.